Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this video, my friends and I from Group 1 will be presenting the play translations by Friel, and we will explore the summary of the play as well as the historical background and analyze the play based on 2 points, which are education and women. I am Nisrin Amani, and I will be sharing with you the summary of the play and explain how the play is connected to language as a tool of oppression through education and women as the first presenter. So the play Translations by Friel was set in August 1833 in Belbeek, County Donegal, an Irish-speaking town. To summarize, the play revolves around language and unfolds the language issues when the British soldiers came to the town to remap Belbeek and anglicize their place names during the colonialism period with the help of one of the characters from Irish in translations. Some reacted positively, but there are also some that reacted negatively to the presence of the British soldiers. Later on, as one of the British soldiers went missing, it caused chaos and the Irish were threatened that their livestock would be killed. The intention of the British soldiers then came to light. Those who worked with the British soldiers joined hands with the Irish to protect what is theirs. Therefore, we can see that language is a powerful tool, as it empowers the colonizers to enhance their power in the colonized lands. Language is seen as a tool of oppression through education, as the British aim to dominate the education system of the Irish through language revitalization, where the main language Irish is replaced by English in school. As the British dominate their power, the education system of the Irish portrays a decline in numbers of H schools, when the British national schools, which use only English as their medium of communication, were established. Next, language is seen as a tool of oppression on women, as a number of the female characters in the play portray colonial mentality as a result of colonization. Colonial mentality mirrors their sense of inferiority against the British. Women in Ireland during colonization were considered feminine and inferior. Thus, women's voices were always silenced, and some women negatively perceived their cultural identity, hence why they adopted or preferred the practices of the British. Language plays an important role in this play, as the British used language to oppress the Irish. In analyzing this play, although points such as geographical renaming would be considered by many as an obvious element, other hidden yet important aspects are overlooked, and that is the reason why we choose to focus on the role of language as a tool of oppression through education and women. That is all from me. I'll pass the floor to the next presenter.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nurteh Batrisha, 1917470, and for my part, I will talk about historical background. Before we talk about the play, let's talk about the author himself. Friel was born on January 10, 1929 in Northern Ireland, and this time Irish was fighting for their rights to rule the land from the British. Therefore, he is deeply affected by the social-political atmosphere of Ireland and how British rule over Ireland. So that's why he explored on cultural, socio-economic, and history of Ireland, and also Irish nationality in most of his works. And this actually goes to one of the most important things in his life, which is in 1980, Friel and his colleagues, especially the actor Stephen Ree, organized Field Day Theatre Group, which this group actually in hope to establish an identity for Ireland that remains authentically Irish within the European community. This group also attempts to break free from the limiting horizon of old nationalism, which of course caused by colonization. And the best thing is that Field Day Theatre Group has become a great culture force in Ireland until today. So this Field Day Theatre Group, which actually formed as a tourist company actually, and then it changed to theatrical production, and then now has become a very ambitious and very inspiring critique that successfully changed the view of Irish people, Irish history and Irish culture that have contributed in Northern Ireland in Friel times, and also right now. So after we have done talking about the author, let's talk about the play. And of course, for my part, I will talk about the settings of the play. So first, let's talk about time setting. Translation was first published in 1833, and it is about 30 years after the Act of Union with Great Britain in 1707. Then we talk about place setting, which it is set in Ireland in the rural village of Bulliabilk in County Donegal, which of course the town is actually a fiction town made by Brian Friel. Then we move on to the social setting, which there are two things that are important. First is the Ordnance Survey of Ireland. Since 1824 till 1846, British Parliament produced the Ordnance Survey of Ireland, which they intend to remap and replace every single thing that has Gaelic names by a translated English or something that is similar to the sound of the English. And then the second important thing is about national school, which those schools were standardized by the government, and those schools keep increasing after the government introduced the penal laws. And this actually caused head school to close. But what is head school and what is national school? So let's talk about head school first. So head school is an all-local Irish-speaking school, and the students in the school were taught about Irish traditional curriculum, where there were Latin and Greek, and then also literature, maths, history, grammar, and also catechism. It is also an independent educational system where government has no power in it. And then the schoolmasters, or we call it as teachers, were either local men or travelers that actually were not trained professionally or officially. And those schools were mostly aimed for the lower class, but it actually has for upper class, but most of the time it is for lower class. However, the number of head school declined because of the appearance of national school, as I was mentioning earlier. And the last head school reported was until 1890s only. So after understanding a little bit about head school, let's talk about national school. So national school starts to increase in 1830s due to the penal laws that was introduced by the British, and based on the law, any practice of communication in Gaelic language was forbidden, and it is labeled as rebellious against British. Therefore, in national school, all education was standardized by the government so that they can use English language as a medium language. And of course, every single thing in textbook and in class is taught in English. Contrary to head school, all traditional Irish curriculum were not even included in the studies. Even Greek, even Latin, or even Gaelic language itself. This leads to the suppression of Irish language, the culture, and also the people. So that's all from me, and thank you very much for listening. I will pass this presentation to my other group members.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good day everyone. My name is Aisyah Kawthar binti Abdul Manan, metric number 1927032. So today I'll be presenting as the first element, which is education, and it will be continued with Awatif. First, we could see how language acts as a tool to oppress the Irish in terms of education. In the education aspect, we could look at the establishment of national school in this play, which marks the end of his school. So, as we could see from the play, Jimmy, Moira, Dottie, and Bridget were all from different ages, and they were taught by the same instructors, Manus and Hugh. So before the emergence of national schools, only H schools existed, and students from different levels were taught by the same master, as how it was depicted in the act. So the H school declined dramatically after the national school was introduced under British rule. In Act 1, page 20, Moira says, "When it opens, this is finished. Nobody's going to pay to go to H school." And the end of H school symbolizes the end of Irish or Gaelic language, because in contrast to the H school, which teaches in Gaelic language, the national school will only teach in English as part of their colonial agenda to instill their culture by replacing English and the intermediate language. So as national school embarks, people starting from early age will only use English language. So Friel was trying to elucidate on how colonialism takes place by implementing the English language in the national school. And we could also look at the significance of Greek and Latin languages that are taught in the H school. They act as a foil to the Irish and English languages. So Greek and Latin languages imply the irony of British who wanted to implement a national school because it is more civilized, but in reality, H school is already civilized because it teaches more than one language, and it also emphasizes on the classical tradition. And this was proven in Ginny's character, who is not only knowledgeable in classical tradition, such as Greek mythology, he is also well versed in Latin and Greek. He also mentioned briefly about Sophocles and Euripides, the two Greek tragedians in the class in Act 1, page 24 and 26. Besides, Irish characters such as Hugh, Owen, and Linus are proficient in 4 languages, which are Irish, Greek, Latin, and English. Meanwhile, Maura, Dottie, Bridget, and Jimmy are fairly fluent in Latin and Greek. So it was proven that it is an irony indeed, because this definitely defeats the point of civilization mission, because the Irish characters know more languages than the British colonizers, who are mostly monolingual, such as Captain Lancy and Yulin. However, only the Irish conversations are translated in English in the class, but not Greek and Latin, and it actually shows that the Irish language has been ostracized. And next, we could also look at Moira's character to learn more about the role of language as a tool of oppression through education. So Moira insists on learning English instead of other languages because she thinks that English language is superior and useful. So this could be seen in Act 1, page 25, when she claims, "We should all be learning to speak in English. That's what my mother says. That's what I say. That's what Dan O'Connell said last month in Innis. He said the sooner we all learn to speak English, the better." So from the text, we could understand that she developed an interest in learning English language, knowing that Gaelic language would eventually become obsolete. So this shows how colonialism takes place in Moira's mind, which symbolizes that people will have to abandon their cultural identity in order to survive. This also relates to the point where Moira wants to learn English to prepare herself for the migration in the United States in Act 1, page 26. So she says, "I want to be able to speak English because I'm going to America as soon as the harvest all saved." And the United States here symbolizes a new opportunity, as many Irish citizens migrated to the United States in the search of new life due to poverty. It is also evident in Moira's character that the ability to speak in English shows that a person is more civilized in Act 1, page 25, when she says, "The sooner we all learn to speak English, the better." And when she quoted Daniel O'Connell, the liberator, "The old language is a barrier to a modern progress." And she also says, "And he's right, I don't want Greek, I don't want Latin, I want English." So her claims just now have proven that the colonizer language have appeared as more superior in her mind, that she was willing to stop learning other languages and she would only want to learn English. So that is all from me, and I would like to pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Hessa. So, Assalamualaikum everyone. I'm the next presenter, Nurul Awatif Hadiny binti Aziz 1918012. And I will continue the presentation today from where Hessa left at, which is the third point under the theme of education. So, Hugh is an educated man of fluency in many languages. In short, he is a multilingual who knows how to speak Irish, Latin, Greek, and even English. So he realized by the end of the play that he had to teach in English even if he doesn't want to. For your information, in the beginning, he was portrayed as a proud nationalist in preserving the Irish language, as he refused to teach English, but eventually he has to agree to teach English due to the circumstance that he was in. This is proven in Act 3, page 67, when Hugh suddenly told Moira, "Yes, I'll teach you English, Moira kata." As you can see here, Hugh realized that by hook or by crook, English will take over and there is a need for the local to learn English. So it can be seen that at the end of the day, even the strongest one, which is Hugh, who originally was so adamant not to teach English, could not resist the colonial operation to instill the colonial mentality among them. This symbolized that the English language has taken control over their mentality. So another proof is when he also applied for the position at the national school, indicating that he was actually aware of the fact that the intermediate language of the national school would be English, obviously, and he still applied for it, which means that he was actually ready to teach English. This can be seen in Act 1, page 20 to page 21. Manan explained to Moira that he didn't apply for the position at the national school because my father has applied for it. Another proof is in Act 1, page 26. Hughes mentioned in the class about his conversation with Mr. George Alexander, where he said, "We discussed the new national school. Mr. Alexander invited me to take charge of it when it opens." So from the two sentences, it symbolizes his acceptance of the new policy of using English language in order to survive. Like he already know that if he accepted the offer, he will be teaching English since it is a national school like I mentioned earlier. And lastly, Hughes also said that at the end of the play, that they have to learn the new names that were replaced by the English name, the places that were renamed in order for them to survive. As in Act 3, page 66, he uttered, "We must learn the new name, and we must learn where we live. We must learn to make them our own. We must make them our new home," referring to how they have to know and recognize the new names and accept fully, because if they don't, they will have nothing to offer. So his repetition of the word "we must learn" signifies the need for them to know, to bow to the rules, to the new rules, and to adapt to the new reality, where it will soon become the English-speaking reality. He also add in the same Act 3, page 66, "We must never cease renewing those images, because once we do, we fossilize." So the images in the sentence was metaphorically used by Hughes to refer to the Irish language and how they should not stop learning new things. It can be interpreted as, in order for the Irish language to survive, the language must evolve and grow. So it just happened to be that way because culture changed. So that's the language, and in the process of keeping up with the time, the people in translation also have to change. Like they have to accept the changes. This could be further compared with his earlier stance, where he refused to teach English by ignoring Moira in Act 1, page 25. Hughes dodged Moira requested, "Does she mean that little Carrie politician?" when Moira was constantly bugging him to teach her English in the class. So he ended up changing the question and topic instead of answering Moira questions. And he also disregarded William Wordsworth as one of the famous English poets. In Act 2, page 41, Wordsworth, "No, I'm afraid we are not familiar with your literature, lieutenant. We feel closer to the warm Mediterranean. We tend to overlook your island." His response symbolized his ignorance of British literature, as he was not interested in it and it depicts how slowly his view is towards the English language. So overall, this signifies the stolen identity of Hughes, who at the beginning of the play was against teaching the English, and in the end had to accept the English language in order to keep up with the shift in policy. So I guess that's all for me. Thank you for listening. I'll pass it to the next presenter, Aisyah.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Aisyah Zuman, and I'll now talk about how language is utilized as a tool of oppression on Irish women. Now, when talking about how language is a tool used by the British to oppress these women, we look at the aspect of feeling inferior, like what Nisrin had mentioned earlier in the introduction. A more specific term would be colonial mentality, in which those who are colonized or have been colonized, they feel inferior or they feel weaker and they feel less than those who colonize or have colonized them. In this case, language is used to control the mind or the mentality of two female characters in the play, Sarah and Myra. Firstly, we'll look at how Sarah's silence at the end of the play symbolizes the stolen Irish voices. And this is apparent in Act 3. You can refer to page 56 to 57. Now, the context of this scene is basically right before Manan leaves Baliabeg. He is bidding goodbye to everyone at the hedge school. He then goes to Sarah and he asks Sarah for her name until she told him her full name. So, quote unquote, "What is your name? Come on, what is your name?" She replies with Sarah. Then he further asks, "Just Sarah? Sarah what?" Now, if you look at the question Manan is asking,
you see a pattern, so a repetition of questions. And this indicates that Manas is reminding Sarah that remembering her name is a way for her to sort of resist the influence of the British, because in this context, Manas asking for her full name seems as if he is asking about her identity as an Irish. So your full name is your identity, and in this case, her name represents her as an Irish and as an Irish speaker. He then further asks where she lives. Now, mind you, Manas knows the answers to the questions that he's asking, but this question alludes that Baliabeg is their home, and this further emphasizes that she has to fight and resist the British's influence or colonization. Now, in the following line, Manas reassures Sarah that she is not at fault. Quote unquote, "You did no harm, you did no harm at all." Now, when you think about it, Sarah is a woman with a speech defect. What harm could she really cause? What harm is he indicating in what he is saying? So could there be a deeper meaning? Could this mean that it sort of represents the innocence of the Irish? Because I honestly believe that that is the intended meaning. After bidding goodbye to Sarah, Manas leaves. And then Sarah repeats herself, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Manas." Now, Sarah apologizing quietly, which is described as so in the play, is because she realizes that they, or the Irish, are in fact inferior to the British, and that there isn't really anything they can do to fix the mess that has been brought upon them by the British. And so in the following lines, Owen approaches Sarah and asks Sarah about the class, but she refused to answer with words and instead used body language. And here it could be seen as a symbol of colonization, because as a woman, she is not able to speak, because even when Sarah repeats her actions, Owen is still confused and he ends up making his own interpretations of what she could possibly mean by her body language. So Owen at this point is still considered as an Irish who is influenced by the British. So in this case of Sarah and how she feels as if she is inferior now that Manas is gone, because Manas, we can say that he represents the Irish language because he taught them at the hedge school, if you remember. Now that he is gone, when she is asked questions by someone like Owen, she finds herself numb and she refuses to utter a single word. We will now look at the second female character, which is Myra, and how she chooses Yolan, a British man, over Manas, an Irishman who is supposed to be her partner. You can refer to Act 2, Scene 2 on page 50. So, quote unquote, "Say anything. I love the sound of your speech." Now, the word speech here is referring to the English language and indicating that although Myra understands nothing of the English language, she is intoxicated by the sound of it. And this could be because she fancies Yolan, but like my groupmates have previously mentioned, Myra is a woman who is eager to learn the English language. And so because he refuses to teach her English, she is of course bound to be extremely full of curiosity and wishes to know more. Which explains why she wants him to quote unquote say anything, because she hasn't had the chance to hear any English ever, and so when Yolan speaks English, it fascinates her. Moving on to the following lines in Act 2, Scene 2, page 52, quote unquote, "Soft hands, a gentleman's hands." Now, Yolan's hand is described here by Sarah as being soft. Now, this is a tactile imagery which reflects the idea that colonizers experience no hardships compared to Irish men at Baliabeg who work hard to preserve their identity, who work hard to preserve their land and language. Now, quote-unquote soft hands are not something Myra is familiar with, hence why she is more attracted to Yolan. And she is more attracted to the unknown. So Myra uses the term
gentleman when speaking of Yolen, which she wouldn't really use when describing Manus. Here, you can see that Yolen holds a higher place or higher status. He is obviously superior to Manus. So this is because Yolen, a British, who knows this fascinating language that Myra herself takes interest in, and Manus is considered as only someone familiar or a familiar place which Myra wants to get away from, thus suggesting her dismissal in her land and her mother tongue. And as we already know, Manus doesn't teach English, so it obviously means that it's also a symbol of dismissal for Irish men like Manus.
In conclusion, translations by Brian Friel illustrate the element of the irony of how the play is conducted and written in English when the play should have been written in Irish. The irony symbolizes the end of the H school, in a sense to show that the British colonizer won over removing the Irish identity, which is their language. The language issues that were presented in translation during 1833 foretell the situation in Ireland, where the usage of Irish language is relentlessly decreasing, with just 40,000 native speakers remaining. Donegal is one of the few surviving Irish-speaking districts. The great majority of Irish people today speak English as their first language, and even those whose first language is Irish are fluent in English, making them fully bilingual. It can be seen that the language of the colonizer has therefore won over the language of the colonized, and it is indeed a loss for Irish. Thus, education and women successfully portray the role of language as a tool of oppression, as the Irish education system is replacing the Irish language with English, and most of the women characters in the play are showing colonial mentality, where they are always silenced and negatively perceive their cultural identity. And that is all from our group. Thank you.